Hello, my dear friends. Today I am sharing something very important that can change the way you speak English. Have you ever felt stuck while speaking English? Do you start a sentence but stop in the middle because you don't know the next word? Or maybe you think too much about grammar and pronunciation and that makes you hesitate? Many people face this problem. They understand English, they can read and write, but when it comes to speaking, they stop thinking or they think too much. This makes them nervous, and their words don't come out naturally. The problem is not that they don't know English, it's that they are afraid of making mistakes. In today's story, I will take you through a journey of a boy who struggled to speak English fluently. He knew English, he could write well, but every time he spoke, he would stop, hesitate, or forget what he wanted to say. He felt embarrassed in front of others, but one day he found a way to overcome this problem. His journey is simple, and his story will help you understand how you can stop overthinking and start speaking English fluently. This story is simple so that everyone can understand. Now, let's begin. Hello, my dear friends. My name is Alex, and today I want to share my story. When I was learning English, I faced a big problem. I could understand everything, I could write well, and I knew a lot of words. But when I tried to speak, my mind would stop. It felt like my brain was empty. I couldn't find the right words, and I would pause too much. People would look at me, waiting for me to finish my sentence, but I couldn't. I felt embarrassed. This happened all the time. In school, when my teacher asked me a question in English, I knew the answer, but I couldn't say it correctly. I kept thinking, is my grammar right? Am I pronouncing this word correctly? And because I thought too much, I would stop in the middle. The same thing happened when I tried to talk to my friends. They would speak English fluently, and I wanted to join the conversation. But whenever I opened my mouth, I got stuck. Sometimes I couldn't even start the sentence. My mind would go blank, and I felt nervous. One day, something happened that changed everything. I was in a coffee shop, and a tourist asked me for directions. He was lost and needed help. I knew exactly what to say, but again, my mind froze. I couldn't say anything. The tourist looked at me, confused, and then he walked away. I felt terrible. I knew I had to do something about my problem. I went home and thought about what was stopping me from speaking. I realized that my problem was not English. I knew enough English to speak, but I was afraid of making mistakes. I was thinking too much about being perfect, and because I wanted every sentence to be perfect, I couldn't speak naturally. That day, I made a decision. I would stop worrying about mistakes. I told myself, Alex, just speak. Even if you make mistakes, it's okay. I started practicing in a new way. I talked to myself in English. When I was alone, I described everything I was doing. I am brushing my teeth. I am making tea. I am going outside. At first, it felt strange, but slowly, I became more comfortable. Then I started thinking in English. Before, whenever I wanted to say something in English, I would think in my native language first and then translate it into English. This made my speech slow and unnatural. So I stopped translating. I forced myself to think in English directly. It was hard at first, but I kept practicing. I also started speaking with my friends. I told them, if I make mistakes, don't correct me immediately. Just let me speak. This helped me gain confidence. One day I had to give a small presentation in my class. Before, I would have been very nervous, but this time, I didn't try to be perfect. I just focused on speaking naturally. And you know what? I did it. I spoke without stopping. Yes, I made some mistakes, but I didn't care. I just kept going. After that, my confidence grew. The more I practiced, the easier it became. I learned that the key to speaking English fluently is not to stop thinking when you speak. It is to think in English and keep going no matter what. Sure, here are some practical examples to help you stop overthinking and start speaking English naturally. Example 1. Speaking without stopping. Situation: you meet a tourist who asks for directions. Before overthinking. Tourist: excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the train station? You thinking too much. Should I say go straight or walk straight? Is turn left correct? What if I make a mistake? You hesitate, get nervous, and say nothing. After fluent response. Tourist: excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the train station? You: yes. Walk straight, then turn left at the second traffic light. You will see the station on the right. Even if your sentence is not perfect, you spoke clearly and naturally. Example 2. Thinking in English instead of translating situation. You want to say something about the weather. Before translating from your native language, you think in your language. You translate into English, you speak. This takes time and makes you hesitate. After thinking directly in English, instead of translating, just think, it's very sunny today. I like this weather. Say it naturally. It's a beautiful day. I love the sunshine. The more you think in English, the faster you speak. Example 3. Using simple sentences instead of complex ones. Situation: you want to explain your daily routine. Before overcomplicated sentences. I wake up early in the morning, then I brush my teeth. After that, I prepare my breakfast, and later, I get ready for work. I make sure to too long, and you might forget words or hesitate. After simple and natural sentences. I wake up early, I brush my teeth, then I eat breakfast and get ready for work. Keep it simple. It's easier to speak fluently when sentences are short. Example 4. Speaking even with mistakes. Situation: you are ordering food at a restaurant. Before fear of mistakes. Waiter: what would you like to order? You thinking too much. Should I say, I would like to have or I want? What if I pronounce something wrong? You feel nervous and say nothing. After speaking confidently. Waiter: what would you like to order? You: I want a chicken burger and orange juice, please. Even if it's not perfect, the waiter understands you. That's what matters. Example 5. Practicing with yourself. Method: talk to yourself about your day. Example: I am waking up now. I am going to work. I am eating lunch. I am going home now. Speaking to yourself helps you think in English naturally. Example 6. Answering without hesitation. Situation: someone asks about your hobbies. Before thinking too much. Friend: what are your hobbies? You. Should I say, I like reading books, or I enjoy reading books? You stay silent, trying to find the perfect sentence. After. Fluent and simple answer. Friend. What are your hobbies? You. I love reading and playing football. Short, clear, and natural. Example 7. Describing what you see. Practice for thinking in English. One of the best ways to stop overthinking while speaking is to practice describing things around you. This helps your brain get used to forming sentences naturally in English. Exercise. Look around your room and say what you see. There is a table in my room. My laptop is on the table. The window is open and I can see the trees outside. The weather is nice today. This simple practice will train your brain to think in English directly instead of translating from your native language. Example 8. Asking and answering simple questions. A great way to practice speaking is by answering common questions. If you prepare these answers in advance, you won't hesitate when someone asks you. Common questions and fluent responses. Question. Where are you from? Overthinking. Should I say, I belong to, or I come from, or just, I am from? Fluent answer. I'm from India. I come from Brazil. Question of what do you do? Overthinking. Should I say, I work as, or I am working, or my profession is? Fluent answer. I'm a teacher. I work as a software engineer. Question. What do you like to do in your free time? Fluent answer. I like reading books and listening to music. By practicing these common questions, you will feel more confident and speak without hesitation in real conversations. Example 9. Telling a short story about your day. Many people hesitate when they have to talk for a long time. The best way to overcome this is to tell small stories about your day. Example, fluent and simple. Today, I woke up early. I made a cup of coffee and checked my emails. After that, I went to work. The weather was nice, so I walked to the office. I had a meeting with my boss, and everything went well. After work, I met my friend for dinner. Now I'm at home, relaxing. Notice how the sentences are simple and direct. This makes speaking easier. Example 10. Speaking with limited vocabulary. Many people think they need a big vocabulary to speak fluently, but that's not true. You can communicate with simple words. Example. Instead of saying, the meal was absolutely delightful and exquisitely prepared, say, the food was very tasty. Instead of saying, I was extremely fatigued after an exhaustive day at work, say, I was very tired after work. Using simple words helps you speak faster and more fluently. Example 11. Overcoming fear of making mistakes. Let's imagine you're in a conversation and you make a small grammar mistake. What should you do? Situation. You want to say, she doesn't like coffee, but you say, she don't like coffee. What to do? Don't stop speaking. Just keep going. Most people will still understand you. If someone corrects you, just say, oh, thanks, and continue speaking. Mistakes are part of learning. The more you speak, the fewer mistakes you will make. Example 12. Practicing with movies and TV shows. Watching English movies or TV shows helps you improve your fluency. Here's how to practice. Watch with subtitles. Listen carefully and read the subtitles. Repeat the sentences. Pause the video and say the sentence out loud. Mimic native speakers. Copy their pronunciation and tone. Example from a movie. Character says, "Hey, how's it going?" You repeat, "Hey, how's it going?" This helps you sound more natural when you speak. Example 13. Speaking even when you don't know a word. If you don't know a word, don't stop speaking. Instead, explain it in a different way. Situation. You want to say, "I lost my umbrella," but you forgot the word umbrella. Instead of stopping, say, "I lost the thing that protects me from the rain." People will understand you, and you will keep the conversation going. Final thoughts. Speaking English fluently is not about being perfect. It's about thinking in English instead of translating, using simple and clear sentences, speaking even if you make mistakes, practicing daily by talking to yourself and others. As I kept practicing, something interesting happened. I started feeling more confident, not just in English, but in myself. Before, I used to feel nervous even in small conversations, but now I was beginning to enjoy speaking. One evening, I was sitting in the park, and a foreigner sat next to me. He was looking at a map, confused. He turned to me and asked, "Excuse me, do you know where the city museum is?" Before, I would have panicked, thinking about every single word before speaking. But this time, I smiled and answered without hesitation. "Yes, it's about 10 minutes from here. Go straight, then turn left at the traffic light. You'll see the museum on your right." The man smiled and said, "Your English is really good." "Thank you, I couldn't believe it." Someone had just complimented my English. It was a small conversation, but for me, it was a big victory. I realized that my fear of speaking had disappeared. I wasn't overthinking anymore. After that day, I made more efforts to speak in English whenever I had the chance. In school, I raised my hand to answer questions in English. In cafes and shops, I tried ordering in English. Sometimes I even talked to myself in English when I was alone. One day, my English teacher noticed my improvement. She asked me, "Alex, you seem more confident these days. What changed?" I smiled and told her, "I stopped trying to be perfect. I just started speaking, no matter what." She nodded and said, "That's the secret." Many students think too much and hesitate, but the best way to learn is to just keep speaking. Mistakes are not a problem. They are a part of learning. Hearing those words from my teacher made me even more motivated. A few weeks later, something happened that tested everything I had learned. My school announced an English speech competition. At first, I hesitated. The old fear tried to come back. What if I made mistakes? What if I forgot my words? But then I remembered my promise to myself. Just speak. Don't stop. So, I signed up for the competition. I prepared a short speech about my journey of learning English. I practiced in front of the mirror. I recorded my voice and listened to it. And most importantly, I reminded myself not to think too much. Just speak naturally. The day of the competition arrived. I stood on the stage, looking at the audience. My heart was racing, but I took a deep breath and started speaking. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex, and today I want to share my story. I spoke confidently. I didn't worry about grammar or small mistakes. I focused on expressing my thoughts. And for the first time, I felt truly free while speaking English. When I finished, the audience clapped. I had done it. I had spoken English in front of so many people without hesitation. I didn't win first place, but that didn't matter. For me, standing on that stage and speaking without fear was the real victory. From that day on, I never stopped speaking English. I kept practicing, talking, and improving. And I realized that speaking English is not about being perfect, it's about confidence and practice. A few days after the speech competition, something unexpected happened. One evening, I was walking home from school when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello, I said. A woman's voice replied, Hello, is this Alex? Yes, who is this? This is Lisa from the City Youth English Club. We heard about your speech at the competition and we would love for you to join our club. We organize events where people practice English together. Would you be interested? I was surprised. Me? Joining an English club? Just a few months ago, I was too afraid to even speak a sentence in English. And now someone was inviting me to an English speaking event? I hesitated for a moment, but then I remembered my promise to myself. I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't overthink. I would keep going. Yes, I said. I'd love to join. A few days later, I arrived at the English club's meeting. The room was full of people. Some were fluent speakers, while others were still learning. The event started with a small introduction round. When it was my turn, I stood up and said, Hi, everyone. My name is Alex. A few months ago, I was afraid to speak English, but I decided to stop thinking too much and just start speaking. That changed everything for me. I still make mistakes, but I don't let them stop me anymore. People clapped, and I felt a new kind of confidence. Then something even more interesting happened. A girl sitting in the front row raised her hand. She had short brown hair and bright eyes filled with curiosity. Hi, Alex, she said, smiling. I really liked your story. I have the same problem. I always stop in the middle of my sentences because I'm afraid of making mistakes. How did you overcome that fear? I looked at her and smiled. I saw myself in her, the same hesitation, the same fear. I said, What's your name? Sarah, she replied. Sarah, I'll tell you exactly what helped me, I said. You just have to keep talking. Don't stop. Even if you make mistakes, even if your grammar isn't perfect, just keep going. Think of speaking English like riding a bicycle. If you stop, you'll fall. But if you keep going, you'll get better and better. She nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense, she said. That evening, Sarah and I talked for hours. We practiced English together, laughing at our mistakes and correcting each other in a fun way. She told me she had always dreamed of studying abroad, but her lack of confidence in English was holding her back. Sarah, I said, if you keep practicing like this, you'll definitely achieve your dream. That night, as I walked home, I felt something incredible. I was no longer just a student learning English. I was now helping others just like me overcome their fears. And that was just the beginning. A few weeks later, the English Club organized a special event where people had to give short speeches. Sarah was nervous, but I told her, remember what I said. Don't stop thinking. Just speak. She got on stage and started talking. At first, she hesitated, but then she remembered my words. She kept going, and by the end of her speech, everyone clapped for her. Afterward, she ran up to me and said, "Alex, I did it. I spoke without stopping." I laughed and said, "I told you. You just needed to trust yourself." From that day on, Sarah and I became great friends, pushing each other to improve. We practiced together every day, and soon we both started speaking more fluently. And then the most surprising thing happened. One afternoon, I received an email. It was from an international student exchange program. They had heard about my story from my English teacher, and they wanted to offer me a chance to travel to another country to improve my English even more. I couldn't believe it. This was something I had never imagined. A few months ago, I was afraid to even speak English, and now I was being offered an opportunity to travel abroad. I ran to tell Sarah. She jumped with excitement. "Alex, this is amazing. You have to go." I smiled. "And you know what, Sarah? You should apply too." And so we both applied. A few weeks later, we got the results. Sarah and I had both been accepted. We were going on an international adventure together, all because we didn't stop thinking when we spoke English. The day finally arrived. Sarah and I stood at the airport holding our tickets, barely able to believe it was real. We were about to travel to a new country, a place where we would have to speak English all the time. "Are you nervous?" Sarah asked, gripping her backpack strap tightly. I took a deep breath, a little, but excited too. This is the real test, right? No more translating in our heads, no more overthinking, just speaking. She smiled. Exactly. No stopping, just talking. When we landed, everything felt new. The language, the people, even the air smelled different. As we walked through the airport, a woman from the exchange program greeted us. "Welcome, Alex and Sarah. I'm Emma, your coordinator. We'll be heading to the student dorms now. How was your flight?" For a second, I almost hesitated. This was the first time I had to answer a question in English in a real life situation outside my country. But then I remembered. Just speak. It was great. A little long, but we are very excited to be here. Sarah added, "Yes, it's our first time traveling abroad, so everything feels new." Emma smiled. "That's wonderful. You both speak English very well." Hearing that felt like winning a prize. A few months ago, I would have been too scared to reply. Now, I was having a natural conversation. As the days passed, Sarah and I explored the city, attended English-speaking classes, and met people from different countries. At first, it was difficult. Sometimes we didn't understand certain words. Sometimes we made mistakes, but we never stopped speaking. One day, while we were in a coffee shop, a group of local students sat next to us. They were laughing and chatting in fast English. I looked at Sarah. Should we try talking to them? She hesitated. What if we don't understand everything? I smiled. Then we just asked them to repeat. Remember, no stopping. So we turned to them and said, "Hi, we're new here. Mind if we join you?" They welcomed us instantly. At first, it was hard to keep up with their fast conversations, but instead of panicking, we laughed at our mistakes, asked questions, and just kept talking. By the end of the evening, we had made new friends. Every day, our confidence grew. We no longer hesitated before ordering food at restaurants. We asked for directions, made jokes, and even helped other international students who were struggling with English. Then came the biggest challenge. One day, our professor announced that we had to give a final presentation in English in front of the whole class. It wasn't just students, there would be teachers and guest speakers too. Sarah and I exchanged nervous glances. This was bigger than anything we had done before. But we reminded each other, just speak. The night before the presentation, we practiced like crazy. We went over our lines, made sure we knew our topics well, and most importantly, promised that no matter what, we wouldn't stop or hesitate. The next day, as I stood on stage looking at the audience, I felt my heart racing. But then I saw Sarah giving me a thumbs up from the side. I took a deep breath and began speaking. Hello, everyone. Today I want to share a story about how I overcame my fear of speaking English. The words flowed naturally. I didn't think too much. I just spoke. I told my story with confidence, and when I finished, the audience clapped. Sarah went next, and she did amazingly well. After the presentation, our professor smiled and said, "You two have come such a long way. Your confidence is inspiring." And at that moment, I realized we had truly changed. We were no longer afraid. We no longer hesitated. We had learned the most important lesson of all. When you speak English, don't stop thinking, but don't overthink. Just talk, just express, just keep going. That journey changed us forever. And it all started with a simple decision to stop hesitating and just speak. As our exchange program came to an end, Sarah and I sat on a park bench, watching the sunset over the city that had changed our lives. "I can't believe it's almost over," Sarah said, a mix of happiness and sadness in her voice. "It feels like we just got here." I nodded. "Yeah, but think about how much we've grown. A few months ago, we were scared to speak English. Now we can have conversations without even thinking too much about it." She smiled. "You're right. And you know what? This experience taught me that learning a language isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to speak, even when you're unsure." I looked at her and said, "That's exactly it. If we had waited until we were ready, we would have never spoken at all. The secret was to just start." The next day, we packed our bags and headed to the airport. As we waited for our flight home, I looked around. There were people from different countries, different cultures, all speaking English to communicate. I realized something important. English wasn't just a subject in school. It was a tool, a bridge that connected people from all over the world. And now, we were part of that global conversation. When we finally landed back home, everything felt familiar, yet different. Because this time, we weren't the same people who had left. We were more confident, more fearless, and ready to take on any challenge. A few weeks later, Sarah and I started helping others who faced the same fear we once had. We joined English speaking groups, encouraged students to practice without hesitation, and shared our journey. One evening, as we sat in a small cafe, Sarah looked at me and said, "Alex, do you realize? We used to be the ones looking for help, and now we're the ones helping others." I smiled. That's because we finally understood the truth. Learning English isn't about knowing every grammar rule or every word. It's about using what you already know, speaking without fear, and never stopping. Sarah lifted her cup of coffee and grinned. To never stopping. I raised mine too. To never stopping. And with that, our journey didn't end. It was just the beginning of something even bigger.